The radio crackled to life, slicing through the tense silence of the battlefield. Call sign Echo 6. Report. The voice was skeptical, almost mocking. No one believed she had been there all along. They thought she had lied, exaggerated her role. But a single transmission, a crisp, confident call sign over the radio, changed everything. In that moment, doubts shattered, and the soldiers realized the quiet woman they underestimated was the very force that had shifted the course of events. The room was quiet, but the tension was palpable, almost electric. Every movement seemed amplified, every whispered order echoing like a drumbeat in the minds of those present. She sat at the edge of the worn cot, fingers tracing the seam of her uniform as if it could somehow steady the storm of nerves that threatened to rise from within. Most of the men in the unit barely noticed her, and if they did, it was with the same dismissive glance reserved for someone they assumed had no real role to play. They thought she was embellishing her experience, claiming a presence on the front lines she had never truly earned. After months of assignments that had skirted the edges of actual combat, her credibility had worn thin. Her name, whispered in the barracks and over morning briefings, often met with skeptical smirks or outright disbelief. Even her commanding officer had hesitated. He was a man of experience, forged in battles that had left scars on his body and soul alike, and he had seen countless new recruits with inflated tales of heroism. Yet there was something about her, the quiet confidence in the set of her shoulders, the way her eyes scanned every map, every tactical briefing, every line of intelligence, that suggested she was more than the sum of rumors. Still, skepticism lingered like a shadow in the corners of the room. She could feel it pressing down, feel the silent questions in the air. Can she handle this? Is she telling the truth? The weight of that doubt was almost physical, and yet she had trained herself to carry it with grace. Every drill, every sleepless night spent memorizing maps and weapon systems, every moment spent honing skills that no one seemed to notice had led to this point. Outside, the air was thick with anticipation, the low hum of machinery and distant chatter of other units forming a tense backdrop. She could hear the faint clicks of boots on metal floors, the murmur of radios, the rhythm of a world on the brink of chaos. And in that quiet, she allowed herself a single thought. It was time to prove them wrong. Not through arguments or words, but through action. The room held its breath as the mission briefing concluded. Eyes flickered toward her, a mixture of curiosity and lingering doubt evident in their gaze. But she met them head-on, not with confrontation, but with a steady calm that seemed to draw attention in its own right. She knew the moment of reckoning was coming, and when it did, there would be no room for disbelief. Everything she had endured up to this point, the isolation, the skepticism, the subtle dismissals, had been preparing her for this exact instant. The call sign she would soon speak over the radio was more than just a name. It was a declaration, a proof that the quiet, underestimated figure in the corner was every bit the force she claimed to be. The night had a way of hiding details, of twisting familiar terrain into a maze of shadows and uncertainty. She moved carefully, each step calculated, her senses stretched to the limit. The mission briefing had outlined every possible scenario, yet no training could fully prepare anyone for the weight of real stakes, the knowledge that a single misstep could cost lives, including her own. Around her, the unit followed with rigid precision, but she sensed the underlying tension. Even experienced soldiers carried doubt in their eyes, a flicker that betrayed disbelief in her presence. They weren't being malicious. It was instinct. They had been conditioned to trust patterns, and she didn't fit the expected one. She checked her equipment again, methodically, as if each clip and each radio frequency were threads in a fragile web that held their success together. Her weapon felt familiar in her hands, an extension of herself, steady and reliable despite the turmoil of nerves. The mission required infiltration under the cover of darkness, navigating treacherous terrain while maintaining radio silence until the critical moment. Her heart pounded, but not from fear. This was focus, honed over countless drills and simulations. Every detail mattered: the slope of the ridge, the wind direction, the faint hum of distant engines. Every second she delayed was another second her comrades risked being exposed. As they advanced, the skepticism around her began to fade into the periphery, replaced by necessity. Orders were given in low, clipped tones, and she followed with unwavering attention, anticipating each movement before it was required. Her mind was a map of contingencies, every potential threat weighed and analyzed, every escape route memorized. The soldiers around her couldn't help but notice the precision in her actions, the subtle leadership that emerged without a word. She didn't need approval. She needed results, and the quiet efficiency of her movements began to speak louder than the doubts that had lingered for so long. The terrain grew rougher, and the night darker, but she navigated with a calm that unnerved even seasoned veterans. When an unexpected obstacle appeared, a fallen tree blocking a crucial path, the sudden flare of enemy spotlights, she was the first to react. Without hesitation, she directed her teammates, her voice firm but steady, cutting through panic with clarity. Instructions flowed naturally, not with arrogance, but with the quiet authority earned by preparation and skill. Those who had doubted her before began to realize that she wasn't merely present. She was essential. The mission's success now rested on her ability to remain unseen, unheard, and yet in complete control of her own role. As the final stretch approached, the radio sat heavy at her side, a silent instrument of proof that would soon vindicate her. Every step forward brought them closer to the moment when she would shatter disbelief entirely, when the call sign they thought was a fabrication would become an undeniable reality. The tension that had clung to her like a second skin was now a sharpened edge, a readiness that no skepticism could penetrate. Tonight, every skill, every preparation, every doubted word would culminate in the instant that would define her. Not in whispers, not in rumor, but in action that could not be ignored. The moment arrived with a silence that felt almost unreal, broken only by the distant hum of machinery and the occasional rustle of foliage under careful footsteps. She crouched behind the ridge, eyes scanning the darkened landscape with a predator's focus, every sense attuned to danger and opportunity alike. Around her, the team paused, waiting for her signal, their skepticism now replaced by tense anticipation. She felt the weight of every doubt they had ever cast on her, every whisper of disbelief, pressing on her shoulders, but it no longer shook her, fueled her. Every calculated movement had led to this single defining point, the moment when she would prove herself beyond argument. Her fingers hovered over the radio microphone, a small, unassuming device that had suddenly become the instrument of her vindication. The mission required stealth, precision, and timing, but also proof that she had been present, active, and vital all along. One breath, one steady hand, and she pressed the button. Her call sign, clear and unwavering, came over the radio. Echo 6, reporting in. The crackle of static faded beneath the authority in her voice, a sound that demanded attention and respect. For a heartbeat, there was nothing. Then the response came, a mixture of surprise and acknowledgement, tinged with the faintest note of admiration. The soldiers around her stiffened, some exchanging glances that betrayed a mix of relief and astonishment. The doubts that had clung to her presence for so long evaporated in an instant. She was not a shadow or a rumor. She was real, present, and instrumental. Every movement she had made during the mission, the silent navigation through treacherous terrain, the deft handling of obstacles, the foresight in anticipating threats, was validated by that single transmission. Her voice over the radio was more than just a name. It was proof of competence, courage, and unyielding resolve. The disbelief that had haunted her for weeks now seemed almost absurd, replaced by recognition that could no longer be denied. As the mission unfolded, guided by her steady hand and clear commands, it became impossible for anyone to ignore her role. She coordinated movements, relayed critical updates, and adjusted strategies in real time, each action reinforcing the reality they had once questioned. The skepticism of her peers had been a barrier, but it was shattered now, replaced by trust and acknowledgement. The radio crackled repeatedly with her instructions, Her call sign a constant reminder that she was not an embellishment, not a rumor, not a quiet bystander. She was the force that had changed everything. By the time the mission reached its critical success point, the narrative had shifted entirely. The soldiers who had doubted her now moved with a newfound respect, responding to her guidance with precision and confidence. The disbelief that had once seemed insurmountable had crumbled, replaced by a clear understanding. The quiet, underestimated figure they had once overlooked was the decisive element in their operation. And as she finally allowed herself a moment to breathe, she realized that her vindication was complete, not through argument or insistence, but through the undeniable proof of action and the simple, resonant power of a single call sign over the radio.